We're joined by Ric Grenell, who's our Senior Advisor for Foreign Policy and National Security and former Acting Director of National Intelligence. But I want to play this first. This is from the U.S. Attorney in Southern District of New York, and we talked about it on our podcast yesterday. We just kind of briefly went over it for you in the first 5 minutes of our second half hour. This is Breon Peace. He is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and made this announcement yesterday, Bite 6.
2 miles from our office, just across the Brooklyn Bridge, this nondescript office building in the heart of bustling Chinatown in Lower Manhattan has a dark secret. Until several months ago, an entire floor of this building hosted an undeclared police station of the Chinese National Police. Now just imagine the NYPD opening an undeclared secret police station in Beijing.
Now, Rick, I'll go to you right away. I can't even imagine that ever happening in Beijing, but I can't imagine them letting it even happen for a year. We found out about this, it seemed like about sometime around the last year, that this was ongoing and a problem around the world. So it's not a conspiracy, and now it's clear it's not, because we have the U.S. attorneys taking action on it, that there's about 100 of these Chinese official police stations operating all over the world. Most countries are not willing to shut them down. They're actually asking the Chinese government to please shut them down, but they won't do it on their own. They're too afraid. We heard that they were shut down, and now there've been charges filed. But just first, to explain to our folks what China was doing here.
Well, they're spying. What they're doing is collecting information, and they're very good at it. They use the leverage that they have against any country that they can use it against. They're really good at it, and it's one of the reasons why I think there is bipartisan support, a very rare instance of bipartisan support, to bring home the supply chain, to do everything that we can to not rely economically on China. But look, we've got countries like Germany, for instance. They sell a lot of cars to inside China, and they have a relationship, a trade relationship with China that is fundamental to their economy. And so we've got to begin to peel this back. The Western alliance should be leading the way, and unfortunately they haven't been, including us. We've got to get much more vigilant and much more aggressive about shutting down their spying activity, limiting their ability to leverage against our businesses and our politicians, and we've got to do it fast.
I mean, you said that they're good at it. You can imagine the scenario very easily that if you're someone who's a recent immigrant to the United States from China and you end up in these Chinatowns in these major cities, you have family back in China. If they find out that you've got any kind of connection either to the government or to a company that they want to steal IP from, I mean, they could utilize these offices, I mean, hypothetically, just to come to you and say, listen, we're going to do this to your family back at home in China if you don't do this. And again, these could be people that came here legally to the United States. They're in the process. They might be American citizens or in the process to become American citizens, and they're still being threatened from the country that they fled.
Look, Chinese Americans here in the United States are some of the most vigilant people against China because they know the tactics. They know the tactics really well. And many of them are like the canaries in the coal mine, warning us of just how bad it is. Remember, if you are an American company that wants to do business in China, you've got to have a JV partner, a joint venture partnership with a Chinese company. And that is how the Communist Party of China demands that all of the information, anything that they want, will absolutely change hands from a private company into the Communist Party's apparatus. And they do that because they get away with it. And so the American companies have to be very clear-eyed when they're working in China as to what the implications are.
One thing I wanted to ask you about was the arrest. Oftentimes in these situations, we do see that the bad actors, their operation is shut down. But I think it kind of shows us where we are relationship-wise with China, that we've decided to actually arrest and prosecute these Chinese nationals who were part of the police station rather than get in some kind of diplomatic discussion with them about maybe returning them in favor for something else or for some other purpose to continue a more friendly relationship. But instead, so for good or for ill, we've now escalated even inside the United States. You're saying we need to do that to an extent. Does it also though show that the relationship has just turned that bad, that adversarial, I guess?
It's a good question. And really the answer is during the Trump administration, we were doing a lot of defensive briefings, meaning going to politicians who didn't know that they were getting wrapped in with a Chinese spy or a strategy from the Communist Party. And we've had to dial politicians back. We need to get more aggressive in doing that with businesses because it's been growing over the years. It's been getting worse. And ever since the Biden administration came into power, remember, they came in very early on saying that all of that Biden family corruption on Hunter Biden's laptop was not real. Joe Biden said it himself, that's not real. That's Russian disinformation. We had 52 former intel officials say, don't look at that laptop or any of the information about the Biden family's ties with China. Beijing loved that. Beijing loved the fact that we had Democratic leaders saying, don't look at this relationship because it's just Russian disinformation. Look over there at Russia. That problem that the Biden family and the Biden administration has had in not being able to stand up to China from the very beginning has allowed China to really take advantage of us and grow their operation inside America. I think law enforcement agencies now, they no longer can turn away. It's getting really bad when you have a police station in New York City, but DOJ and FBI needs to get much more aggressive about San Francisco and what's happening there. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds at first when this story broke about sometime last year. It almost sounded like a conspiracy theory that this was operating inside Chinatown.
I thought of it as like, it's operating like a one booth little police something, like nothing crazy. Like I didn't realize a floor of a
consulate.
Yeah, exactly. That's how in my head how it looked. Not a floor of a building, in a major part of the city.
Right, done covertly.
Right.
Not through an official consulate where we know they have a lot of problems with those too. I want to turn a little bit to politics too, Rick, because we saw again, over the weekend, there was a big RNC meeting where we are actually in Nashville. And out of that weekend, both of our senators who are good friends of ours, ACLJ, endorsed President Trump. It was both Senator Haggerty and Senator Blackburn. And what I want to talk about, I kind of see the moderates in the party. And it's not all the other people who necessarily put their hat in the race yet. It's a lot of people who haven't yet who are more of the mainstream, we'd say, and they're freaking out these last few days. The Never Trump group, and what I think I think that they realize is that it's at least another 5 years. They have been pretty much excluded from Republican politics, and it's like the party doesn't want it back.
Yeah, look, I think Donald Trump is the leader of the party. There's no question. People in Washington, D.C., who are politicians are recognizing that because they see when they go home the massive crowds and the grassroots. I'm really proud of the fact that the party today, the Republican Party today, is a party of first and second generation Americans, working class people, minorities. It's not your father's Republican Party. It's really changed. And there's a lot of people who don't like that. There's a lot of people who want the traditional, let's have Republicans just talk about cutting taxes on corporate America and celebrating corporate America. My problem is that corporate America has become so woke and anti-common sense, anti-conservative, that I'm not sure that we should be shilling for corporate America anymore. I think the workers of America need a voice, and that has been traditionally an outsider. So I'm really pleased to see that so many politicians are rising up and supporting that message. But I will say this, Jordan, I think that that tent is expanding. When you add those first and second generation Americans who see the breakdown of common sense, people are coming around and saying, hey, I may not like mean tweets, but he's got a lot of common sense.
Yeah, and I think that what you said, too, about the party, a lot of us who have been working it for decades, we wanted to see it get to this point. We knew that it had the potential to be the Big Tent party. We believed in it, but we had to work through to get to the leadership positions. And there's people always get angry. You're not always agreeing on everything. But the idea that we've taken from the left some of their core bases.
For sure.
Is how we go and compete in the Midwest.
Yeah, I think the tough part will be the media saturation, making sure you can actually get your voice out there. I mean, that's why there's broadcasts like ours and others, because that becomes the big concern is where do people tune, or where do they turn to watch the news, to, like you said, big corporate media seems to be against you.
Yep.
Well, you got to make sure there's other voices out there and other people talking about it, whether you're a conservative, whether you're independent, honestly, at this point, whether you find yourself somewhere in the middle, because it feels like the media is certainly one-sided to the extreme. So now finding even alternative voices that even aren't as far right is harder and harder. But thankfully, people are starting to wake up to that. We obviously see that at Rumble and other places.
Yep. Rick, we always appreciate it. It's going to be great to have Rick through this whole process. It's a very interesting primary to see coming together, but also the big issues coming about.